Writer's Dream. The Writer's Dream is a show where authors can talk about how they write their books, how they publish their books, and how they market their books. You can find us on YouTube. Just search my name, Linda Maria Frank. I am the author of Annie Tillery Mysteries. Click on my picture and all of the interviews will come up. There are over 100 interviews with authors and people who are connected to the authoring business. And there's some very interesting information. So I hope that you look it up and enjoy it. We're also on Facebook. The name of the page is The Writer's Dream. And we are also on Cablevision, Channel 20, on Thursdays at 2:30. So we're all over the place. If you wish to be on The Writer's Dream, you can message me through the Facebook page. So today's guest is Antoinette Trulio Martin, better known as AT. And I don't know how that came about, but she's going to tell us. She's a speech therapist and a special ed teacher, and now a very successful author. She's just come out with a brand new book. We've had her on the show before. And the new book is, Antoinette, what's your new book? The Heart?
The new book is The Heart of Bakers and Artists.
I love the cover.
Isn't it pretty?
I love it. And you know, your main character is Lily, right?
Yes. Her name is Lily Taglia. She is a daughter of Sicilian immigrants. And it is 1911 in the Lower East Side of Manhattan, where there are millions of people on the streets, crowded into tenements, and children are all over the place. And here they live out their childhood. This story is loosely based on stories my grandmother had told about her life at her childhood in the tenements. She came over on the boat when she was about 2.5, 3, and they lived in the tenement, Little Italy section between Mulberry, Mott Street, and Elizabeth Street until she was 17. And so she had some, adventures. She learned to get tough. And she was the eldest of 5 daughters. And my great-grandfather was a dock worker. And my great-grandmother took in work. She did piecework, collars and cuffs.
Right.
And my grandmother.
The garment district, right?
Yes, all in the garment work. Needlework was key in that time. The factories were really pretty prolific in getting garments out, making it very affordable. But that took a lot of man hours, working the machines, getting these women to come into factories and sew, pressers. The Jewish community was very big in this time, but they would not work on the Sabbath on Saturdays. So there were special arrangements where they set up their own sweatshops in their apartments, and they were pressers and sewers, and then they would send out piece workers to put these garments together.
Okay, so this book actually came from another book that you wrote, correct? Daily Bread.
Yes, see, there was a big confusion. It came. Daily Bread was the original title.
I see.
And the publisher had done an illustration, but this is geared for middle grade children. So the algorithm of Daily Bread was not working. It was not going to the audience. So we needed to, so we needed to change the title. And while we were at it, I really wanted a better illustration. So I searched out and I found Penny Weber after searching, Berlin, because you could meet everybody around the world. India, I had long conversations with a gentleman in South Africa, but I went with Penny Weber. Turns out she lives 3 towns over. She lives in Holbrook. And she
Well,
does,
there's a lot of talent here on Long Island.
there really is. So I was so happy to find her. And so she did this cover. She's doing the sequel cover. That one comes out in a week, The Dreams of Singers and Sluggers. So she did that one as well.
All right. Tell us why bakers and artists.
Well, I wanted to tell stories from family history. I do a lot with my blog deals a lot with family stories and how some of these stories evolve and live around the table and become lore. And I've always been intrigued by this. Even when I was a kid, I would sit at the table and just listen. And it was always the same old stories. There was another rehashing. There was another version or clarification. So, and to me, I was entertained. And so long as I stayed quiet, I was allowed to sit at the table. And
now you have all this on your blog, yes?
Yes.
All right. Well, how do we get to your blog?
That's www.storiesserved.com.
Stories served. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think people will be very interested in this because it's funny that your main character, your new main character is Lily, because in my new book, my new main character is Lily as well.
Oh, see that? Yeah.
So
what was her, the names of the children are the American names, the Americana names. And so this kind of went with my grandmother. Her name was Margaret. She was always called Margaret, but her real name was Margareta, and her sister was Lily, but her real name was Laboria.
yeah, Lily's much nicer.
Yeah, much nicer, and it was easier to spell in school, and so I found names to be an interesting path to go down.
So the bakers are the family recipes?
Well, yes. My grandmother was a very good bread baker, but she learned to bake bread from the Jewish baker on the corner.
Mm-hmm.
And the man and his wife in real life did not have children, but they invited children in the neighborhood to come and learn to bake bread. So they would have to come first thing in the morning and then leave school at noontime to knead it and shape it. And then when they came back, came home from school, they would pick up their daily bread, and they could pay 3 cents a loaf instead of 5 cents a loaf.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a little savings, became a skill. The only requirement, that you had, besides being responsible and coming in, was that you had to be a certain height so that you can lean into the table and not spill flour or anything. So my grandmother's story was, she was 10 years old when she first got to learn how to bake bread at the Jewish baker. And the wife, she said, was a little crazy. She was a little dotty, and she loved the children, and she would have a roll for them in the morning. So they would have a breakfast. And when they would come from lunch, they didn't go home to lunch. So she would have a little something. She would make a special roll and put a piece of cheese or leftover meat in it for them. So she was very kind, but they were constantly bleeding money. They weren't making much of anything. Mm-hmm. So, but when her sister Lily came to the bakery, she was much younger. She was only 8, but she was very tall, so she could just about reach the table, and the baker loved her. And my grandmother said it was because Lily was so pretty. She had red hair and the bright blue eyes like Papa, and she wasn't short and brown and like I was. So the baker's wife made such a fuss over her. So I expanded that story and brought Lily into the streets.
Who are the artists?
The artists are the baker's wife in this fictional version. The baker's wife turns out to be she was a ballerina in Russia. And we learn that there's a sub-story in there where during the time of when Russia was invading the Jewish neighborhoods and also arresting those who were educated and those who had who were against things that were changing. So so she was caught up in all that. So she was I don't want to give away too much, but basically she was attacked, and so she's always reliving this terror, the terror that had happened. So she goes off on these fantasies of being back on in the ballet. Lily, however, sings, and she can sing. She makes up songs. She has a very powerful voice, and it's infectious, and her little sisters love it. And so the baker calls her an artist. She knows she knows how to sing, and Lily sometime when the ballerina becomes very depressed and almost catatonic, Lily's able to sing to her and bring her back, specifically using the Sleeping Beauty in the Woods ballet.
Oh, yeah. That's beautiful. Now, you say it's for middle grade and history. So how does that fit in?
Right. I find, I was a teacher. I'm now retired, but I was a teacher, and I find this early part of the 20th century to just kind of be glazed over in study. But it's a fascinating time because it laid so much foundations to the life that we now live, between labor, education, housing, just general health and access to health care was amazing. And also the issue of immigration. We're seeing that now, and the same rhetoric and the same
insults
that go back and forth. We're with the Italians and the Jews and the Greeks that came over with their accents and when they had lilts and their funny way they dressed and the traditions, the old world traditions. My other grandma used to say, don't name your child an Italian name.
That's right.
Because they would make fun of her. It's one thing if it's a boy can fight, but a girl can't fight.
Yes.
Yeah, but my grandmother did.
Yes. I think that there's a certain, I see if you agree with this, there's certain values that our ancestors, my grandparents too, came over in before 1911. But by 1911, they had built a house in Queens and they had pretty much established themselves. And they were Polish. And of course, the Polish people suffered a lot of discrimination as well. In fact, my grandfather was told, because my grandfather and my grandmother came from Prussia, where at that time there was no Poland. And it was either occupied by Russia or Germany. And both my grandfather could speak German. So they lived in a German neighborhood, and he was liked by the German men he worked with. And they said, change your name. Because you speak German, you'll fit in, start a business, and you'll be okay. And he followed that advice, and that worked out. And I'm assuming that the same thing is occurring with the immigrants who come over here today. I hope it's better, but I don't know if it is.
Yeah, it's like I was seeing it in the schools. It was not. it was very distressing seeing some of this happening, and especially with the children, because it's with them that they carry it, and
Sure.
they carry it forward. And I think it's very important for children of all generations to really understand where you came from. See where you came from, so you could understand and see where you're going.
Yeah, I saw an interview on TV. They were speaking of the immigration problem, and the gentleman who was being interviewed said that he very much resented the fact that immigrants were labeled as coming from nothing with nothing. And he said, we didn't come from nothing with nothing. We brought our culture with us and our language and our history. And I'm thinking that that's probably really the value of your book.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope it starts a conversation with kids and inspires them to go to their grandparents, parents, and ask, how did you play in the old days? What did you play? And what kind of chores did you have to do? And how did you go to school? Did you want to go to school? What was that like? And I was able, what was kind of cool in doing this story, and the second story is, I was able to bring in a lot of different stories, little vignettes, and put them in.
Story
about being left-handed and being punished for being left-handed.
Yes.
That's what being able to having a race to get to church on time because you were locked out if you got in late.
Yes.
No excuse. So things like that. So I was able to pepper in some of those vignettes. And on my blog, I had started, but it has since been suspended because I've got a lot going on right now. But I was starting a prompt that I had wanted to share with the kids, where every month it would be, grand prompts to ask your grands.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. Who was your best friend? Why was this friend why was this friend your friend?
You've probably thought of this, but I have a suggestion. I don't know how newly retired you are, but you probably still have friends who are working in schools. Why not take those prompts and ask them to give them to their students as an activity?
Yeah.
And then
I have.
With the promise. Oh, you have done it. Good. Yeah. With the promise.
I have. And it's just been a very slow and going type of thing. And I just had to backpedal a little bit while I got these books out. And
right.
Yeah.
No, I know. I know how hard it is. Do you want to read some reviews?
Sure.
Okay, so the reviews are all written for Daily Bread, but we'll just we'll just say
the same book, different cover.
Right. A Heart of Bakers and Artists is a humbling experience as you read through the chapters and gain a relationship with the characters. It embraces child labor, the hardships immigrant families endured during a time spoken very little about. I couldn't put the book down, and I'm hoping for a sequel. Daily Bread is brilliant. The Hearts of Bakers and Artists is a page-turning story about family ties, community, and struggle on Mott Street in 1911. Antoinette Trujillo-Martin will captivate young readers wanting to know more about the immigration period as they travel through time with this heartfelt story about the way it was and how daily bread from the bakery wafts a ripple effect of meanings for the characters and their places in the world. Next one, Antoinette Trujillo-Martin's novel, The Hearts of Bakers and Artists, is an impressive piece of middle-grade historical fiction about the Taglias, a Sicilian family who immigrated to America at the beginning of the 12th century. It does not take long for the reader to get fully immersed in the day-to-day lives of characters who are devoted to making better lives for themselves and their families. You will fall in love with the Taglia sisters and their dreams. This novel is definitely a page turner. Do you find that you have an adult following as well?
I do, which I'm thrilled.
Yes.
I'm thrilled. I find that especially people who might be over 40-ish, maybe over 50-ish, where they themselves might be beginning to become grandparents themselves. And,
Well, this is a great mommy and me activity.
yes. Oh, I think so.
Well, grandmommy and me.
Grandma and me.
I mean, we lived with my grandparents, so I was fortunate enough. And my grandmother died when she was 93, so I had my grandmother until I was in my 30s. And she didn't speak English very well, but my mother had all the stories. She would tell my mother, and I recorded my mother before she died.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And now, of course, we have Ancestry. And to awaken this interest in ancestors and then to be able to go to Ancestry with it is such a gift.
It truly is. And, I've gone to Ancestors, and I find that having the hard data, on birth dates, when they bought things, when they bought property, how many lived in the home, were great anchors of time. And kind of clarified some little details, but it was really the oral history that gave the meat, that enlightened so much of it. Like my mother always said that her grandfather was so suspicious of the Americanas that will come around and count you. And so they would pretty much, when they knew that they were in the neighborhood, because everybody knows everything, they would not be home, or they would physically move to another apartment. So they wouldn't be counted, and they weren't counted officially until he bought property in Brooklyn.
And then he had to be counted. Yeah.
Then he had to be counted, and that was okay. But my grandmother was not counted until they were in Brooklyn. The sisters were, because they were born in America.
Right, and they went to school. Yeah.
But, and school was a big part of life. It was my grandmother's constant lament that she couldn't finish. She wasn't allowed to finish.
Yeah.
She had to leave before she was 13 to work in the factories.
Well, our ancestors knew that school was the key.
Yes.
To the best of their ability, they kept the kids in school as long as they could. But if you got to the 8th grade and had an 8th grade education, you could still get a decent job then.
Right.
It's not like it is today. And but the New York City schools, of course, were the great levelers. They enable these kids to get a foothold in society.
Right, especially during that time that there was such a progressive movement that went on looking at these people as being so valuable and very important to boost up the American citizenry. And there were all kinds of movements which I address in the second book that's coming out next week.
Oh, that was my next question. What's next?
What's next? The dreams of singers and sluggers come up.
And so sluggers are baseball players.
Stickball in the street. Right. And it's going to also feature. It also features the New York Highlanders, which were before the Yankees were the Yankees, and the singers come out with actually with public health nursing, and this is showing how public health nurses came out into the tenement neighborhoods and cared for the sick and pretty much promoted education, making sure the girls stayed in school. Girls being out of school was, especially within my culture, it was like, why educate a girl when she's only going to get married in a few years and not contribute to the family? So put her to work now.
which is completely debunked.
Oh, that's,
In modern society, countries that do not educate their women do not do well economically.
right, right. Yeah,
They
they're
are
all,
the first teachers of the children.
yeah, always in a state of poverty. But
Thank you.
okay, but basically, it showed the power of some of these incredible women who were part of the women's suffrage movement
Mhm.
and later on the peace movement.
Well, this
And
is a very exciting time in history, I think. And
yes,
if you had, I'm gonna do you the elevator pitch thing. If you were in front of the best publisher at Simon and Schuster, what would you say about your book?
this one,
Yes.
yeah, I would say that this is an this is a story of this is a coming of age story of showing the oh, I wish I had my script in front of me.
Yeah.
This
She
is
shows kids the value of hard work, family.
family ties, right, tradition. Yes.
I'll be
And
used
thank you.
So AT, this was really a great interview, and
Thank
I
you.
hope that people look you up on Amazon because you have a great body of work, and we'll see you soon.
Yes, thank you, Linda. This was wonderful.
Yeah, and I love your Christmas cactus back there.
Oh, that was for my great grandmother. It was a